again, let's keep our eye and ear to the street on the Anthony Belton situation. All right, now I want to talk a little defensive line room, if that's all right with you guys and gals. I thought this would be kind of cool, as we're going to break down also some Devonte Wyatt talk here in a minute. We put an article up over in our Patreon group. If you guys want to join the Patreon group, you know how to do it. Just go to patreon.com/Packer Fan Total Access. $3 get you access to everything on the site. If you want to be generous and give more, there's a $5 and a $10 tier, but just focus on the $3. That's more than enough to help us out, and it also gets you extra content. We're going to break down that Devonte Wyatt breakdown here in just a second, but I just want to look at the defensive line room real quick. I want to get your all's opinions on this. Again, if you're watching this live, fire off in the chat. If not, let us know in the comments when you do get a chance to watch this. So let's start with quarterback pressure percentage, okay? Brenton Cox Jr. led the way at 13.7%. He ended up with 4 sacks on what appears to be only 95 pass rush attempts, all right? So when you look at Brenton Cox Jr. and how he played, it's somewhat limited snaps, and that is worth mentioning. But the fact that he had so much production as a pass rusher, that's my number 3 rusher, guys. Now, listen, Baron Sorrell may come in, smack him in the mouth, and take that from him, right? That could be the case. But as it sits right now, what I would like to see in the rotation is Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness on the edge. Now, there's rumors that Van Ness is going to kick inside. If that's the case, maybe the plan is to get Brenton Cox Jr. out there on the edge, What I don't want to see happen, I don't want to see Kingsley Enagbare take meaningful snaps away from Brenton Cox Jr., Rashawn Gary, or Lucas Van Ness. Now, you can see with the play time here, Gary 58%, Brenton Cox Jr. 35%, Lucas Van Ness 39%. Keep in mind that the reason that Lucas Van Ness's snaps were so low is because Preston Smith was on the team for a significant amount of the season before they traded him away to Pittsburgh. So that once he left, you get to see LVN in the lineup more often. He played way, way better. Oh, Lord, AFAM's mom's in the chat. He played way, way better in the second half of the season, kind of even with the cast on that thumb, right? And I know some people say pass rusher, who cares about the thumb? No, you've got to be able to use your hands to rush the quarterback. You've got to. So, again, Brenton Cox Jr., 13.7%. Rashawn Gary, 13.4%. Lucas Van Ness, 11.2%. That is a higher pressure rate than TJ Watt had this year. I'm going to continuously mention that, right? In terms of sacks, you have Brenton Cox Jr. with 4. Rashawn Gary led the way at 7.5. Then you had Lucas Van Ness with 3. Devonte Wyatt, obviously, on the interior with 5. We'll talk about him here in a minute. Kingsley Enagbare finished with 4.5 sacks, but he had a significant amount of pass rush attempts as opposed to Brenton Cox Jr. Kingsley Enagbare, 277 pass rush attempts, right? And Brenton Cox Jr. only 95. So if you were to have given Brenton Cox Jr. double the snaps at the rate at which he was going, at a 13% quarterback pressure rate, he would have led the team with 8 sacks. I think the big thing we're coming away with when we do these type of exercises, these deep dives with these specific positions, is Brenton Cox Jr. needs to be in the lineup. Am I wrong there, guys? Does Brenton Cox Jr. not need to see more time? Like, it just to me, it makes so much sense. Daryl in the chat says Brenton Cox has untapped potential on pass rush waiting to be unleashed. He was the backbone of the defense when others were down and out. And it did seem like every game there was a flash play or two where he'd come in off the bench and he'd get in the quarterback's face. Now, the problem with him is much like Devonte Wyatt's was last year, run gap integrity. It just seems like Brenton Cox Jr. would just kind of just pin his ears back, run up the field, run right past the rush lane, and give up a running play in his lane, or maybe not set the edge the way he should against outside zone runs, things like that. Last year, he played a lot better. He really did. And when you look at his stops, he had 9 stops last year. And it looks like 12 tackles, right, on 59 run D snaps. So with those nine stops, the majority of those would probably be on run defensive snaps. That's a pretty good percentage there, man. I mean, what would that be, guys? Let me look here real quick. Let me break out the old calculator. 9 divided by what we say 59. Let's say that all those stops came on run snaps, and they may not. There might have been a screen pass or 2 in there, but 9 divided by, 59 run D snaps? Yeah, it'd be a 15% run stop rate that he would have. I feel pretty damn comfortable saying that would be the best on the team. Gary had a really, really good year in the run defense with 39 run stops there last year. So, again, Brenton Cox Jr. is a name to kind of keep an eye on. Kingsley Enagbare, to me, he's on his way out. I don't see any scenario where they're going to look to re-sign him in anything other than a minimum contract with no guarantee. Aaron Mosby's another one. So now we're talking about bringing in 2 rookies in Barron Sorrell and Colin Oliver. Now, I know we're all excited about Barron Sorrell. When you look at the tape of Colin Oliver, man, I got equally, if not more, excited about him. And that's not to take anything away from Barron Sorrell, but Colin Oliver looked really, really interesting. If you're going to throw that hybrid role in there, if you're going to throw like a Leo or a Viper type in at outside linebacker and let him rush and then continue to drop into coverage as well, show a lot of those fire zone looks, which we know last year Hafley really, really loved those fire zone looks. And most of the time he ended up bringing 4, so he would simulate pressure, sugar, what we refer to as sugaring on the line of scrimmage. So, yeah, I think that what you're probably going to see here, if I were running the show today, I would want to see the majority of the reps unless something crazy in camp happens and Barron Sorrell just comes in with his hair on fire along with Colin Oliver. I would want to see the share go Rashawn Gary, 60% of the snaps, Lucas Van Ness, 60% of the snaps, and then Brenton Cox Jr. at that normal 35 with the intent that when these guys are going to get banged up. You know how it is in the NFL season. People are going to get hurt. It's going to happen. I'm not wishing it, not trying to be doom and gloom, but it happens every NFL season. So if Rashawn Gary or Lucas Van Ness has to miss a game or two, I want Brenton Cox Jr. stepping right into that starting role and taking that 60% of the snaps, 55 to 65% of the snaps there. Now, after that, what I would love to see happen is Barron Sorrell take the next wave of those snaps over Kingsley Enagbare. Because what you're going to have in Kingsley Enagbare right now is what we call a progress stopper. And usually when we're talking about progress stoppers, we're mentioning those guys from a starting standpoint, right? We're talking about them, starting and taking like last year, Preston Smith. Preston Smith stunted LVN's growth by being on the roster. Now, ain't no two ways about it. LVN's pressure, his quarterback pressure percentage was somewhere around 8 or 9. And then when Preston Smith leaves and he gets more snaps, all of a sudden you see that pressure rate start to rise. At one point, there was like a 3 or 4 game span where he was over 15% pressure rate, LVN was. And now he's settled in at 11.2 at the end of the year. I got a lot of high hopes for LVN as well. So for me, I don't want Enagbare being that progress stopper. And this is nothing personal toward Enagbare. It's just really, really simple, man. Look, we need to get these young guys reps early. So I would want the pecking order to go Rashawn Gary, LVN, your starters, Brenton Cox Jr., that number 3 guy, kind of like we talking about swing tackle just a second ago, a swing guard. He would be your swing edge. Brenton Cox Jr. getting the next wave of reps. And then Barron Sorrell, Colin Oliver, and Kingsley Enagbare. Now, I want to hit Tom out there and say this. If we come into camp and Kingsley Enagbare just turns camp on its ear, right, and he's just a dominant force and he's proven, no, he's the better pass rusher. He took a huge step forward, right? If that's the case, then I'm okay with Enagbare being on the field. I just have no reason to believe he's going to take that huge jump right now. I don't know how you guys feel about that. That's just kind of how I see that. So, yeah. Let's see here. H.E. Soder says, so why has Green Bay struggled to get someone to generate a monster number sack season? Last big hit was Z. Smith, 13.5 sacks in 2019. Who was your defensive coordinator, Soder? You remember? It was Mike Pettin, right? So when Mike Pettin was the defensive coordinator, they brung a lot more of an aggressive approach. Now, some people would say, well, that, does that mean they're blitzed a lot? It could. I mean, obviously, that's the definition of being aggressive on defense as well. But you can be aggressive with just the front 4. And there's a lot of fans, there's many people that don't understand that. It's a really, really simple concept. If you're willing to filter out the noise of everybody who just all of a sudden pretended like this defensive line in 2024, man, they all of a sudden suck. And then you turn on the tape, and you're going to see it a little bit with the Devontae Wyatt tape if we get to it tonight. I don't know if we will. But you'll see a couple of plays where he kind of lags back a little bit, and then he sees a shot, and he just takes a shot and goes, right, where he's kind of protecting a rush lane. That's how Jeff Hafley called it. With Mike Pettin, it's pin your ears back and go. With Joe Barry, it was pin your ears back and go, not quite to the level that Mike Pettin did it with. But, again, what's the byproduct of that? What's the negative aspect of running a defense like that? Go back and watch the Giants game and watch Tommy DeVito time and time again just take off and run up the field because the outside edge rushers were just pinning their ears back and getting upfield, right? And then you see Matt LaFleur get involved with the Joe Barry defense. He adjusted that, and they stopped doing that down the stretch of the season, and you didn't have quarterbacks running all over them again. So, again, when you look at that 13.5 sacks in 2019, it's how they're being coached to rush the quarterback. That's not – you can – let me put it this way, Solder. Now, 2019 is a bad example because they had a pretty damn good defense, right? But would you rather have a defense like under Joe Barry, right? Would you rather have a defense that can't stop the run to save their life, but they're getting higher sack totals than we did last year? Or would you rather have the second best run defense in the league while still finishing 9th in sacks, right? Last year, people have convinced themselves that the Packers were horrible at rushing the passer last year, and it simply was not the case. They were not in sacks, and they were top 3, top 5 in EPA per drop back in pass defense. You see right here a negative 0.02. So they were, if you actually break down the numbers and put everybody in order, they just got the playoff teams there at the top. This again was in the 2024 season. All right. They were tied with the Eagles in EPA per drop back on defense, right? Those are the metrics you should be looking at and not truly sack totals, right? Because the goal is to stunt the offense with your defense, right? I would much rather have someone that finished, like I said here, in terms of EPA per drop back at this point in the season. And I'm thinking this was this was obviously into the playoffs. So this was through the divisional round. So it's pretty much the entire season. You essentially you were tied for the 3rd best pass defense in the league in terms of EPA per drop back. Now, when we go to yards per pass play, they were top 10 as well, right? Then you finished 9th in sacks. You finished 2nd in run defense. That's what you need to be focused on, not so much the sack total. So, again, sacks are fun. People love, mainly because it is an easy stat to find. You can go to ESPN.com, find the sacks, right? You got to do some digging to look for EPA per drop back, to look for some of these advanced metrics that, by the way, EPA teams use that metric, right? The 33rd team uses on their website, and they use the SIS data solutions to compile all that information. That's how they truly gauge whether their players are playing good or not. Mostly the tape, but the EPA metric is another thing that they use pretty significantly. So, and again, I know there's people that don't like mentioning the tape, and I've noticed that the people that don't like when you mention the tape, they're too damn lazy to go watch the tape. That's very, very convenient. They like to look at spreadsheets, and PFF is the one, and I'm always going to mention this because people will pull stats from PFF and they have no way to back it up with the tape. None. It's just some random person that works at PFF that compiled these numbers by watching the tape, but you don't know who they are. You don't know their name. You don't know their football background. You don't know the specific plays that they're charting. There's 2 ways you can do that. You can chart it yourself, right? You can watch every single play and chart it yourself, or you can go to NFL Pro and you can actually look at these plays. You can pull them up and look at these plays in real time as you dive into it. So, again, when it comes to the defensive line room and specifically the edge position, that's the order in which I want to see it, man. Is Rashawn Gary, LVN, then Brenton Cox Jr., and then try to give the rookies a chance to take that swing role there, the backup swing role, I should say. And then from that point forward, if Kingsley Enagbare is better than the rookies, then all right, it's going to be a red shirt year for them. Let Enagbare eat if he takes that step forward. I'm just not anticipating it happening personally. So there's a little defensive line breakdown for you guys.